Hey guys, welcome to the R&D Grow. And we've got Josh Hedberg with us today from Bioag, and he's going to be going over a bunch of the different products that Bioag offers and some of the different ways to use them. We're starting off with our bench cycle with the clones that we had. I actually transplanted them up from 1 gallon to 5 gallon today. Josh, welcome to the show. Welcome to the Grow. I don't think you need any real introduction, but maybe introduce Bioag a little bit and what the mission is of Bioag to help growers.
Well, we're a biostimulant company. We are primarily, we started out in regenerative agriculture, rebuilding old beat up ag soils and bringing them back to life so that people can get more life out of their soils. And it just so happens that these products work fantastic for, just growing about just about anything, but particularly pot. At least that's what I discovered years and years ago. And me and Dr. Faust took all of his products and basically large scale ag products and put them into small sizes for everybody. So that everybody can have access to products that you used to have to go to an agronomist and pay him a lot of money to come check out your soil and get it tested, and then he would prescribe you what which products are going to turn around and fix your problems.
Well, and I know, like I've read through all the literature, and that's one of the things that is suggested is, if you're not quite sure, reach out to Bioag. You have the specialists there that can talk to not just a cannabis grower, but a farmer, depending on the crop, because I know with the Amino and some of the different products that you have that have boron, there's a stipulation to make sure you're not putting this stuff on a crop that is susceptible to boron.
Absolutely. There are, Boramino is an interesting product. One of the reasons we came to market with it is because Oregon soils, native soils in Oregon, are naturally short on boron. So it's a common ingredient that we get asked for by a lot of farmers in our general area and a lot of our oldest customers. And the problem with using most boron supplements is they're very hard to apply. They're usually very concentrated, but they're usually, sulfate based or like Solubor is another great one, which is a fantastic product, but it's very hard to use on a small scale. If you're using it by the acre, it is far simpler to do the math than if you're using it in a pot. I've killed a lot of plants with Solubor, trying to get, just a little significant effect. Whereas with the Boramino, which is an amino acid product that's got a 10% boron, it can give you the same effect, but it's much, much easier to apply. It's very, very hard to overuse, so you can get that effect, but it's still a boron supplement, so you still got to be very, very careful with it. Boron's one of the few elements out there that can pass right through your skin. So you got to wear gloves, you got to wear a mask, you got to use safety equipment when you're dealing with this stuff. You have to respect your ingredients. Just because it's organic doesn't mean it can't harm you. Fine powders, you do not want to breathe in any way, shape, or form. They will damage you, especially in the long run. So you usually want to wear a mask, or, if you're just mixing up a couple of teaspoons into a gallon of water, you don't have to go and, put on the gloves and the mask and everything. You just got to use good safety, common sense, but if you're mixing up more than 5 gallons of solution at a time, I absolutely 100% recommend, at least wearing gloves and a mask. That's just good common sense when you're working with any fertilizers, biostimulants, powders, Mycorrhizal, I don't care what it is. Any of it,
etc.
etc. Whether it's a bad bacteria that might be in there that's not good for you, or whether it's a powder that you could inhale. These are ingredients you need to respect.
Yes.
Just like being a mechanic, you don't want to get oil all over your hands for 30 years. You're probably going to pay for that with a bad liver and maybe a little cancer.
Exactly right. So PPE is an important thing. It's just like wearing your glasses under the LEDs. If you're not doing that, you're going to damage your eyes. It might not be today, but as time progresses.
Yeah, like we were speaking before we started here about I was talking with a large commercial farm, and they had gone and had the decibels tested in some of the grow rooms and found them that they were up in the 35 decibel range. And I get, I'm not as familiar with what that means, but from what he was telling me, that's when that's when you start to get damage after you're in there for 7, 8, 6 hours at a time. Which if you're in there working on a big grow room, that's not that's workers every day. Those are the things you have to think about. Those things that gardens got to think about. You don't want to be damaging yourself or your employees, because they're working in your garden.
Well, exactly, and I think that's probably one of the rare occasions as anybody's actually tested for that. Is I've never even heard of anybody doing
I never even thought about that. But I've worked in a lot of very loud grow rooms. All of us have. If you work in this industry for a while, everyone's had that loud fan. They're like, I'll replace it later. I'll just let it wind. But maybe that's not such a good idea. As we're doing this thing, we're supposed to get better in time, and maybe that's one of the things that the newer generations figuring out that we didn't.
Yeah, exactly. And maybe that's something that I think you can even check on your phone.
There's lots of apps and things on how to do that, but better safe than sorry. Just like wearing gloves when you're working with chemicals, better not damage your hearing or your sight when you're working in a grow room.
Exactly.
Yeah. But back to teas, we've got several different products that work fantastic for either compost, living soils, or for feeding bacteria in soils, or for compost and compost teas. Particularly, we've got a blend called TM7, and what it is a combination of humic acid, fulvic acid, and 7 different micronutrients. And that micronutrients is specifically designed not only to help with deficiencies, but specifically to feed and stimulate microbial growth in the soil. That's long-term health food for beneficial bacteria and mycorrhizae in your soil. So you want to use that product particularly when you transplant.
And you want to use it with this product, which is the mycorrhizal fungi.
Yes, sir. And that is also fortified with another amount of humic acid. And that's a blend of several different species of mycorrhizae. And that mycorrhizae is specific to environment, hot, cold, wet, dry, whichever environment it ends up in, that's going to be the dominant fungus, and everything else just becomes food for the bacteria, for the mycorrhizae. But it just depends on where you're putting it. It will dictate which
really
mycorrhizae is
way to do it.
Yeah.
It's really a brilliant way because, you don't know as a company where your product's going to end up, and to have that variety, I think is a brilliant way to market your product.
Absolutely, because you never know what environment it's going to be in. Then there's lots of different plants that it can be used with. But, one of the things I learned now that I'm learning more about the ag, not all plants have a mycorrhizal relationship. So sometimes mycorrhizae, is just not a part of the program when you're growing things like kale or broccoli. I think it was kale and broccoli. I know it was kale, but they don't have a mycorrhizal relationship. Whereas things like tomatoes and cannabis absolutely do, and you will see a monstrous difference in your root size and the robustness of your plants by adding mycorrhizae when you transplant, and then fostering that beneficial bacteria and that beneficial fungi in your root zone with additives like humic acids, fulvic acids, mycorrhizae, using products like silica and fulvic acid, stuff that helps reduce the salts, so again, your mycorrhizae can thrive in that thing, and then it can take care of increasing the uptake and exchanging nutrients with the roots and the soil. You take care of the soil will take care of the plant.
Well, exactly. And the mycorrhizae in their tunnels, they actually sequester carbon and store it for later use.
Yeah, and any way you slice it in a container, you've got to, mycorrhizae takes a while to get established, man. So if you want to see a difference, you really need to get it on there as soon as humanly possible on that first transplant, and you need to feed it. Unless you're growing an outdoor crop, you're growing a longer than a 4-week cycle in your veg, and and you've got more than 7 weeks in your flower, you really need to add stuff in veg to increase your mycorrhizae, unless you're the only way to make up for it is to use a ridiculous amount of mycorrhizae, but that's not cost effective. I'd much rather use
90 days is your full population in a pot.
Yeah, but you'll see a positive difference in a shorter time. It's just, will you see the full benefit of it? Which is why I always like using raised beds in a true living system, that symbiotic relationship that you get going with that soil and how well you can reuse it is just a huge benefit of that system as opposed to using containers. But not all of us have the benefit of of using beds in our spaces.
Well, exactly. Like myself, I'm in a 48-foot, Atlas van trailer, moving trailer.
Exactly.
And so, yeah, it's pretty tough to put a 4x4 bed in here and make it function properly. I have just enough space.
But is the juice worth the squeeze? You could do containers and get to the same place. It's just that's one of those things where it just depends on what's going to be the easiest to get it in there. And maybe having that giant container in that small space isn't as good of an idea as having some pots in there that you can move around and easily get rid of when it's time.
Well, why don't we actually take a walk down over into where the veg plants are right now?
All right.
Just take a quick little tour here. Like, don't crash into anything too much here. Everybody that's been on the show before is used to my doing this. So we're going to see our veg here. I'm just going to have to close this down. So these are our plants here. Did I lose you, Josh?
No, I'm looking.
Okay. So these are the plants that we're going to be running with the Bioag.
Excellent.
So we've got John Burfello's Medi Kush, the 3 strains that he sent us, and then we've got the 2 males in the back corner there that are the SFV OG Kush.
Yes.
Males. So this is what we're going to be running now. You can see I transplanted the up to from these 1 gallons, and those are Lily's rosemary. And I also harvested all the vegetables that we had in here. And you can see I've used it as a green manure. So do you have any questions, Josh?
No, it's looking good, man. I really like that Medi Kush. I had if it's the same one that I was familiar with, it reminded me of a really nice Bubba Kush phenotype.
Okay.
Not quite exactly the same, but really, really nice frosty pot.
Okay, unfortunately, I don't have any female. I got seeds from Cali Connect, and I popped 2 seeds, and I ended up with 2 males.
Hey, there's that's not the worst thing that can happen.
Well, that's true. Like that, I know a lot of people just hate to see that, but I don't think we're going to mind it at all because of what I'm doing for why I'm growing is to actually produce seeds for microgreens for a young lady that has a lot of difficulty with seizures. And that's the main reason that I'm growing is to collect the seeds for her. So having the 2 males is, bonus.
Yes.
So you can see all your products here.
Yes.
Let's talk a little bit about Cyto Plus.
Okay. Cyto Plus is a sister product to the TM7. What Cyto Plus is it is the exact same blend of humic acid and fulvic acid and micronutrients. They just added a soluble seaweed to the mix. And it was originally designed as a large-scale trigger for organic tomato farms, used as a foliar spray or in compost tea. But it's designed
trigger. What are you talking about? It was used as a trigger
to trigger plants into bloom, to start the reproductive cycle. It was designed to be used on a large scale, so it's a very concentrated product. You only use about 1/4 teaspoon per gallon, whether it's in a tea or a foliar spray, and you only need to use that per cycle about maybe 3 times, maybe 4 times as a spray and as a watering.
Okay.
But it's designed specifically for that time. Another thing that it can be used for is some people use it in combination with the calamino and the nitroamino to make a simple water on a veg formula when you don't have time to do a good veg tea. That's a combination of 7 different micronutrients, a good amount of nitrogen, 10% calcium, and then you can adjust your nitrogen needs by how much nitroamino you add into the blend. But there's more in that than most organic grow for liquid fertilizers on the market. But it would be something like around a 10-0-7.
Okay. So
but that's
really,
just
you really want to focus then the Cyto Plus going into and maybe the first couple of 3 weeks of flower is
when you really focus on the Cyto Plus, once you've got a plant that's older than let's say 4 or 5 weeks and is close to flower or within a couple weeks of flower. You stop using it once you get your first flower set. Anything, once you get that first puff that's bigger than a pinky nail, you're done with Cyto Plus. So the most you're going to be using it, even in the longest cycle, is about 4 or 5 applications.
Okay.
The rest of the time you've got TM7 for the earlier times when you don't need the added seaweed.
Now you sent me a chart. I actually have it up on my board up here. See if I can get a shot of it for you guys, if it's going to come in. But this is your chart.
Yes.
For what everything is, and you've got week 1 to 2 of veg, 3 to 4, 4 to 8, and then going into bloom. Now, when we look down here, you've got things that you should be adding in 4 to 8, and it's almost everything except for the BAM in what you have on this sheet. Is that the normal routine that you followed, or have you made changes to this since
No, this is just a very general guide for people to use with just about any soil and just about any fertilizer program so that they can get an enhanced effect from biostimulants. That was really designed for like people that are blending or using living soils, or people that are using common home fertilizers. But it can also be adapted to large scale applications. But once you, the reason why there's such a diversity in like a lot of the time for the full power, I recommend anywhere from 10 to 20 mils. That's quite a wide choice. But the difference between that choice is whether you're hand watering it on once a week or whether you've got an automated watering system where you're watering multiple times a day. The more you apply these products, the less you use. Ergo, if you're using a watering system, you're never going to use more than 5 or 10 mils per gallon of a product like Full Power. Whereas if you're watering it on by hand and you're only watering 3 times a week, if you water it on once with 20 mils per gallon, and you'll get the same effect. You have the same accumulation of fulvic acid. But it just depends on how you're peeling the onion. There's 100 different ways of getting to the same place. But is that when you use them, you use the most when you need the least, and when you need the most, you use the least. So when they're small, you're using a lot of these products at full strength. But as your plants get larger and you get larger root balls, bigger stalks, you're reducing that every week until you get to bloom, and then at bloom you're cutting it in half, or you're reducing it all the way. Depending on what you need. But it all depends on the size of container you're in, the quality of water that you're using, the quality of soil that you've got. So you can use all of these products the entire time, but less is always more. It's not how much you can use, it's how little you can get by with. But you got to start at those higher amounts to figure out, okay, I didn't need this much, and reduce it here and reduce it here, but you don't ever want to use too much of anything that's got micronutrients in it. Those are the only products that I sell that you can hurt your plants with. But that's not in one shot. That is, I water with micronutrients, and I used a micronutrient supplement, and I've got a fertilizer with micronutrients in it, and I did that 3 times a week for 4 weeks, and now I've got a micronutrient screw up because I used way too much. Micro means a little bit of the time. So most of those micronutrient supplements you can get by with only using those once every week or 2, or even less. And again, the more you use it, the less you use. Like with the TM7 and Cyto Plus, those use sulfates for their source of micronutrients. So you use those the least. Whereas with a product like multi-amino or calmino, you can use those much more often because those are an amino acid based micronutrients. So it's more available to the plant, and the plant doesn't have to use as much energy to absorb it. It can use it faster, and it can get through it quicker. So that makes it easier to use product. Think of it like the difference between using a blowtorch or a lighter. The sulfates are blowtorches. They do their job, they do it quickly, and they do it well. But they're easy to go too far. Whereas with the amino acid broken down micronutrients, it's a lot more forgiving, so you can do things that you couldn't do with sulfates, or you could do them in a much easier fashion.
Now, on your sheet, you've got most of the stuff is once or twice a week.
Yes.
Is that, and you've got them all listed.
Yeah.
If you're doing twice a week, you basically, instead of doing 20 mils on say the full power, you do the 10.
Yep. And you can also, if you're doing that in like your veg, once you get to bloom, you cut that in half. You can cut that in half again. So you can go down as low as 5 if you're doing it twice a week in bloom.
Right.
Whereas in veg, you want to use 10 to the 20. But
right.
But so like a good example would be like let's say I'm using like an old school like subcool super soil mix. So I'm going to go into a regular potting soil in my 3x3, and I'm going to water that when it's time with quarters of a teaspoon of my humate products. I'm going to use my my full power or my bio supersill at somewhere around a 1 to 3 ratio. So if I'm using let's say I want 10 mils in total, I'll use 2.5 mils of bio supersill to 7.5 mils of full power to get a total of 10 mils of fulvic acid with 2.5 mils of silica in there.
Okay.
And instead of using like 5 mils of that and 10 mils of that for a total of 15, you can reduce, because you're using 2 products that have fulvic acid, you can minus off the value of one when you're combining it with the other.
Okay, now, and that's just for that side of it, or does that actually work with the amino products, which has the amino acids in it?
Correct. So if you want to use the nitro amino, and it says to use 5 to 10 mils, and you want to add the calmino or the multi-amino in it, you're still only using 5 to 10 mils in total. So you split those all by 3 or 50-50. But I always tell people with the aminos and all this stuff, less is more. If you think you need a teaspoon, use half a teaspoon. You can always add more tomorrow. You cannot put the toothpaste back in the tube.
You can. It's just very, very hard to do.
Yes, it is. But like I said, it's hard to burn plants with this stuff. But that doesn't mean you want to. These are for what I always tell people is it's like those stereos back in the 80s. You either had 3 big knobs that you're always messing with, or you got like a dozen switches and don't touch my levels.
Yeah, don't play with my EQ, man. I got it set.
That's the way I got it. Don't touch it. And these are just adding more switches. So you've got that ability to give that little tweak to that one plant that, oh, this one yellowed early. Oh, this one needs a little bit more juice to it at the end. This one needed a bigger container, but I couldn't provide that. So I'm going to get it by with this. But it just depends on the effect that you're looking for. Too. Excuse me, just 1 second here.
Oh, not a problem. I was just saying that a lot of that is strain specific as well, because some cultivars need more of one compound than another. Like a tomato needs more than a cannabis plant in certain areas.
Absolutely. And if you've got the ability to add those specific, there's basic rules for making plants happy with biostimulants. If you want to make a plant happy on a regular basis, give it a good fulvic acid, give it some good silica, give it some good organic nitrogen with either, a little bit of micronutrients or a little bit of calcium, depending on what you're going for, and that will make just about every plant on the planet happy and grow healthier, but particularly fast growing flowering plants.
Yeah.
Because they use those as the building blocks for life. You give it more calcium, you give it silica, it's going to build a stronger stock that's going to be more resistant against bugs and fungus. And you give it a good source of nitrogen and a catalyst that's going to help increase the fertilizer to go along with this increased growth rate, so you don't get that yellowing at the tops of your plants when you're growing really fast.
Yeah. Yeah, that stretch is the worst because that's when she just sucks up all those nutrients.
Exactly. And there's certain things you can do to help prevent that stretch. That's another thing you can do with biostimulants, and particularly with foliar sprays when you've got tight plants that are packed together. I deal with this with a lot with commercial gardens that do tray systems with multiple plants per tray. Instead of packing them in there, they spread them out a little bit more. They veg for a slightly longer, and then they foliar spray really heavy and water heavy with not only usually Super is the one I recommend, but if you got really stretchy plants, I combine that with I believe it's freeze dried coconut water. I usually get mine from Build a Soil. But there's several different places you can get it from. But it's a fantastic product to add in when you've got stretchy plants, to help slow that stretch. But you got to catch it when it's doing it. It's not something that you can just water on once like a PGR and see this radical difference. There is no biological free ride. You got to try when it's organic. It's not a chemical. It's a chemical effect that you get through adding organic matter in a specific time at a specific way. Just like if you add a combination of fulvic acid and a little bit of Amino with a potassium and phosphorus booster during your latter, couple weeks of bloom, be that organic derived or chemical, you will see a added bit of quality with that size and that frost. But it just depends on, again, how you're trying to peel that cat. You can get to the same place by using different specific types of micronutrients with sativas and with hard to feed hybrids. That's one thing that I discovered about Boramino is that if you use it in very small amounts, anywhere from 2 to 3 times, at those very specific points that, I found on a 9-week cycle at week 4 and 5 or 4, 5, and 6 on a longer cycle, but very tiny amounts. I'm talking like a gram per gallon. And with those aminos, they're so fluffy. That's like I think like an eighth of a teaspoon or something like that. It was a tiny amount. And that made just about the same amount of a difference as using one of those expensive potassium and phosphorus boosters, because it catalyzed the potassium and phosphorus that I already had, that I already paid for, and I don't think I need to add more. If there's one problem that I have with our industry, we use too much macronutrients to feed too small of plants. There's way too much runoff going into that water, and it doesn't need to happen. It's not how much you can use, it's how little you can get by with. Using 4.5 EC doesn't impress me. Did you get the same yield at 1.25 EC? That's what impresses me. You can grow hydroponics efficiently and responsibly. It's just we're not there yet.
Yeah. Well, I think it's just a lot of it is the knowledge base, and it's like you said, the industry is pushing more and more and more because they make more and more.
Well,
that's why
the only way you make money on petrochemicals is in bulk sales. You're not, 1500 calcium nitrates, 1500 calcium nitrate, whether you buy it from A, B, or C, it's the same stuff, comes from the same place in Germany. Sorry, just the way it goes.
Well, yeah, and then who's the better marketer? Who has the nicer package? And
exactly, but that technology is taken about as far as they can take it. It's the new innovative stuff is all in organic gardening, whether it's nanostructured fertilizers coming out of India or new bacterial based or amino acid based products coming out of India or out of Europe. There's so many cool just soybean based amino acid products that are coming out, over the next several years. You're going to be blown away. Full on fertilizers that are basically vegan. And that's another thing about the Bioag line is that we use no animal byproducts, absolutely zero. We are 100%, plant and rock derived. That's all we do. We're compost. It just depends on the product and how we use it and where it goes out there.
You have proprietary techniques that you're using to strip these minerals and
yes, we do,
out of the base to put into these products. So I'm not going to ask that because Bob would kill us both. Okay.
Yes.
So instead of I've been doing a foliar application and a soil drench on the same time. I've been doing every 3 to 4 days for the last couple of weeks. Should I be backing that off, using a little bit more, or bumping it up? Because I water daily because I'm in 5-gallon cloth pots. And spread it out longer term.
Here's the easiest way to do that. You mix one tea at one size from the beginning to end, and it never changes. The water you use to dilute it with when you water with, that changes. So you've got your tea, and at the beginning, it's either water straight on or dilute it X amount with X amount of water, right? So like, let's say it's your tea is a concentrate, and it starts off at 1 cup to 1 gallon of water. Right. So by the time you hit week 2, now it's half a cup or 3/4 of a cup. And that just gets a little bit weaker. And then if you want to get other levels that you want to stay higher, you add a little bit of you want to add a little bit of more full power to it right when you water it on, or you want to add a little bit more of the aminos for a little bit more grow or a little bit more micronutrients as you go. But your base of your micronutrients and your sulfates and your bacterial and that stuff, it's continually getting lower and lower as you go. But you don't have to brew more or less tea or change your recipe at all. You just dilute it more as you're going.
So basically what you're saying is, make a full 5-gallon pail, and then, you do your watering, etc. And you fill that pail back up, which dilutes it. You do your watering a foliar, and you fill that pail until it's basically clear, and then you go to start over again.
Yep.
Okay. Cool.
And the more you go on, so you can turn it into that 5-gallon pail. Through veg, it makes can stretch as far as like 8 to 10 gallons. But in bloom, you could stretch it as far as like 15 or 20. Because you've already built the stalks, you've got the roots, the bacteria, the funk, it's there. You just got to make sure you're not missing the stuff that has been absorbed, washed away, or messed up, because of something that you watered with. Again, there's no genetic free ride, and you must rob Peter to pay Paul when it comes to, balancing microbes and, keeping micronutrients happy. So at the beginning, during the, when you're going through veg, it's about keeping the nitrogen where you need it for that variety. So if you got a heavy feeder, you use more nitro on it, whereas a lighter feeder, you use less. But once you get to that stage where it gets a little bit older, that's where you'll see that adding a little bit more of the multi-amino is going to keep it a better green, because it's used up more micronutrients that it had slow releasing out of the soil. Especially right when it gets ready to reproduce or trigger into flower. When you get to that week before and the 2 weeks in to 3 weeks into flower, your micronutrient needs double and triple. And if you supplement that properly, you lose all that yellowing that you get prematurely in, the 3rd and 4th week of flower after it goes through that hard into flower. Particularly if you're indoors and you're going from like an 18 hours or 24 right into a 12-12, and you're hitting it with a hammer with that light change. That you'll see a bigger difference there than you would like in an outdoor environment with that trigger.
How about, like, I know I generally take 5, 6, 7, 8 days to bring it down from like an 18-hour cycle down to the 12. Do you recommend that, or are you more set in like flip now and be done with it?
If it's a commercial garden, usually I'm flip it and I'm done. Most people aren't willing to go to the stages that are the lengths that you're willing to go. And if you are, then you'll probably have a lot less problems, less with herming, particularly with very hybridized plants.
Yeah.
So if I was growing some very questionable bred genetics that were very commonly sold and often complained about hermed, then I would probably do it exactly the way you're doing it. But if it's steady as a rock, cuttings you've grown for years, 12-12, 18-6 has worked for me for 20 years. But if you have the ability to go that extra mile, go that extra mile. That's what makes the smaller gardens so much better, is there's so much things you can do as the controller of your little space that no one can do on a bigger level, which is why you've got the potential to produce a better quality product that's going to produce more than any commercial garden, which is why growing at home is so much fun.
Well, yeah, and especially here in Canada, because legally we're all allowed to grow 4 plants at home. we can have that time and or take that time to have a better product in the end.
Absolutely. I'm in the great state of Oregon, and we also have the right to grow 4 plants for every adult in every household. And, I think that's an absolute wonderful right that everyone should have.
Yes, I think it should be a global right. But before we get into
Yes,
too much trouble here, we're going to look at this is the full humic.
Yes, sir. That is the humic acid base for TM7 and Cyto Plus. We also have a new liquid version of that also just became available. And what it is a I believe a 50% humic acid, and I believe it's somewhere around 30% fulvic acid, which would this product is used particularly to condition soils. So when you're reusing soils, or if you're gardening in outside soil or reusing raised beds, that's really where that product pays its rent, in the long-term conditioning of the soil. So when I'm doing when I'm reusing soils, I incorporate that. I'm already using it in my teas, but when I don't want to have the added micronutrients from the TM7 or the Cyto Plus, I sub it out for that product. Especially if I'm doing compost teas more than twice a week, because I only want to add that stuff at most once a week. You can go too far with it, even if you dilute it very far. It's got a lot of elements in it, and frankly, you just don't need to use it that much. And the full humics does a fantastic job in catalyzing those micronutrients that have already been put in the soil. But if you're reusing soil, the long-term benefit of adding humic acid on a regular, just adding a couple of quarters of it, a quarter of a teaspoon in with a couple of gallons a couple times a week, even without brewing it, is immense. Adding it in with your worm beds and adding it in with your compost piles makes a huge difference. Those microbes and those worms utterly love this stuff.
Cool.
It's also something that you can blend with your soil before you plant. Along with that goes with the TM7 or the Cyto Plus. Some people make that a regular part of their soil amendments when they're building their highly amended soils. And you don't need very much. It's only about 1 pound to 2 pounds per yard of soil. So that goes
not very much.
That's not very much. That goes a very, very long way. And that's the same with the Ion 14. The Ion 14 has got a granular version of the full humics, except it is fortified with monosilicic acid. That's actually got, I believe, somewhere between 5 and 7% monosilicic acid. That was originally designed to reduce salts and help regenerate soil. So it's a fantastic top dressing, and it's also great for amending soils, particularly reusing soils.
Yeah, and that's where we don't want to be wasting money, and that's where I reuse my soil. Like the soil that I planted in today, I'm reusing now. I haven't been using the spikes and layers like I was when I was growing with the Revs formulas, but because I'm reusing this soil, not starting with a fresh soil, I've actually added spikes and a flowering layer at the bottom to help supply those micronutrients I know have been already pulled out of my soil, right?
Yeah, one of the techniques from the Rev that I really picked up that I saw a major difference with reusing soils was using Mycorrhizae in spikes. If you're reusing your soil, just making a couple of finger holes, 3 of them in the pot, and adding a couple of teaspoons of VAM or whatever good mycorrhizae you got, it makes such a difference if you're reusing that soil. I was blown away with the results from it. I try to do that, particularly with raised beds. Huge, fantastic results, especially in flower. That facilitates a lot of potassium uptake. That can make as big of a difference as using any bloom booster out there. Except it's mycorrhizae, so it's freaking cheap and it lasts a long time.
Yeah. Well, and you've got, as we talked about earlier, the different varieties. I think there's 5 different varieties in there. So, whether you're outdoors, indoors, in North America, in South America, it doesn't matter. You've got the wide variety.
Well, and all the mycorrhizae is cannibalistic. So if it's not working out, it's just food for the one that's dominating.
Yeah. Now you're putting spikes in now. Mycorrhizae, when it activates, I think it's 1 inch that it can shoot out a spore to be able to contact. So how it's obviously in a stasis form in the powder. When you're putting it into the soil and you're watering and it's getting moist, is it going to take off right away, or is it going to generally wait for those roots to come closer?
Well, usually when I put those spikes in, I'm pushing through the roots. They're already at the top when I'm doing it. And when I'm watering, that's the really important. That watering is a high dose of full power, because one of the best benefits of full power is waking up microbes out of a dormant state. I sell a lot of that product to companies that make liquid beneficial bacteria and fungi that use it just to wake it up out of a dormant state, so it can get going, which is why I like to add my full power within like an hour to right away when I'm using my compost tea, because you don't have to brew it in there the whole time. That's what the humic acid and the slow releasing stuff does. It's going to do the kickstart. That's just the supercharger that you put on right at the end before you water on. Same with the aminos. Those are already broken down. The sulfates and the micronutrients in the TM7 and Cyto Plus, you want to brew that for a while, at least, 8 to 12 hours, along with your compost. Whereas there's other stuff you can add just right there at that time. You can add the silica and the supersill and the Amino in with that, and you just fortified your tea with 10% calcium and silica. Then it's not then you've already got the humic acid and the fulvic acid from the TM7 and the full power you just added, but you can add significantly less full power and Cyto Plus because you added the TM7 first.
Right, let it propagate.
Yeah, so instead of using it again at those higher 30 mil, 20 mils, you're using it closer to that 5 mil, 10 mil, and getting the same exact results.
Cool. And that's something that we all need to consider. Like, I know I'm going to be watching this particular episode and taking notes on what how you've formulated these plans.
Here's the trick. Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
But here's the trick that I found with all this. Write down. You got your whiteboard right there. Write it down. It's easy to remember how you killed it. It's hard to remember how you got it right. So if you write down what you did and when you did it. Even Julia Childs gets the recipe wrong every once in a while on the cake. You got to write it down and check it every time. And that's how I learned these little differences is, I didn't need that much. Reduce it until you see a difference and then go back to where you didn't. That's how you learn how to use this stuff. These products are great to play with. They're very hard to overuse, and you can use them in lots of different ways to get a lot of different effects.
Well, and there's the different combinations. Like, do you recommend all the products, for every single time? Now, and before we go into that, though, now say I've got a 1 cup.
Yeah.
Now I take your sheet and I, follow the amounts that you have, and I put it all in the cup. Can I just add that to, because if say I make enough for a 2-gallon batch of water. I can just add that directly right away. I can put it in a foliar sprayer right away. Or should I be, bubbling it first for that 12 hours before I use it?
All of these products can be used either way. Okay. So you can add it in to fortify and improve your compost teas. Or if you don't have time for a compost tea, you can use these together like I used to make something I called a cold brew, no brew tea, where I would take a common, well-known compost tea that came from a bottle, my old favorite one was Bud Swell, but there's good ones from Fox Farms got an old school one that's out there. Mind you, you're paying more for this than they're worth, so they're really only for the hobby farmer. I can't see a guy using it on a large scale. They're probably going to make it themselves then. But if you don't have time and you're a gardener, you got a life, you got a job, you got a family, sometimes you forget. Oh crap, I didn't do the shit last night. I fell asleep early. So I take my Bud Swell base, and then I add I fortify that with my Cyto Plus. If I'm going for bloom, or I fortify it with my multi-amino if I'm going for veg, and then I decide from there, if it's veg, I'm probably going to split, 1/3 to 2/3 Calmino to nitroamino because I'm making a grow formula, and then I'll just mix that all up and I'll water that right on.
Okay.
I
know I started adding this stuff, using it a couple of weeks ago. I've done 4 applications so far, and basically I was doing just that, mixing it in the cup, adding it to the 1 gallon or 2 gallons of water, doing a foliar, and then a soak, a drench right away, not even using it with teas at all.
Oh, absolutely. It just depends on where you see it fitting in your program. If your teas are absolutely performing tip top, don't touch the butterfly's wings. If you're, sometimes it's best to leave it. Let a dog lie. Sometimes those recipes are not designed the best, and because of that, they need to be made the way they were made. If you see an improvement when you add it to it, keep it up. If you don't, then don't. But it's all observable at that point. You need to, observe your own garden and know your plants, and that big old thing, give a shit and check on it on a daily basis. No one can make you care for your garden. You got to care for it. You got to make it not a chore, and you got to love it. It's just like a pet. If your pet is costing you 10 grand a month in doctor's bills and bites you every time you come home, it's not a fun pet. Same with a garden. If it's costing you too much money to run and it's not fun to go in there, and every time you go in there you get bummed, that's not a good thing. You need to make it happy. You need to make it a happy place, and you do that by finding a way that's simple to grow, that fits in your, not only your budget but your life.
Exactly. And there's too many people that take it to the extreme, and taking that negative energy into your grow is never a good thing.
No, you should be shaking that off at the door. It should be the happy place in the garden.
Yeah. Even when you have problems in your grow, it should still be the happy place, because you get to learn how to fight them.
Exactly. And this also helps. All of these products are in tune to bring the focus back to where it should be, the beginning of life and growing plants. A flower room is where a plant goes to die, not where a plant goes to live. Plants live in a veg room, they die in a flower room. It's just a byproduct of your veg room. So if you don't have a good veg room, if you don't have good healthy moms, you're never going to have a good flower room. And even if you don't, you're never going to have as good a one as you should.
Yeah. Now, we'll take a look at we got the Calmino, the Multimino, the Nitromino, and the Boromino as the amino products.
Yep.
You had mentioned before, you can play with the different amounts depending on what you're looking for as a result. Can you give us a good example of a combination of, say, the Multimino and the Calmino?
Well, absolutely. Once my plants have been established in any container for more than 3 weeks, usually about that 4-week mark, I like to take a 2/3 Calmino to 3/4 Calmino to 1/4 multi-amino, and use that as a foliar spray. But I'll do it in very low doses. So I'll take 1 teaspoon. And I'll do, 3/4 of a teaspoon of the cal to 1/4 of a teaspoon to multi, and I'll lightly spray the undersides of my plants once every week or two, and that really helps keep those purple stems and that early yellowing at bay, particularly when I'm trying to grow bigger plants in smaller pots, and the bigger they get in those pots, depending on how they green up. If you notice more yellowing at the top, you need more Calmino. If you notice more yellowing, that's kind of off across the whole board, you need a little bit more multi-amino. If it's yellowing at the bottom, you need more nitroamino, just the plain nitrogen. It just depends on where the yellowing and where you see it with those plants. Particularly with sativas, landrace, stuff that's hasn't been commonly bred in this world. Just plan on regularly using the Calmino throughout the entire cycle, because it's same with the nitroamino, because they're nitrogen loving plants. They just hate every source of nitrogen that cannabis growers want to provide them. They do not like calcium nitrate. They do not like slow releasing heavy nitrogen like from blood meal and feather meal. They seem to really like stuff like insect frass, and another real general one would be alfalfa meal. Those are gentle sources of nitrogen that you can fertilize a sativa with and not see its leaves go, which they seem to do.
Yeah. I'm just going to shift to a more comfortable chair, guys. Just hold on a second.
And the other thing I'll say about the aminos is the more you can apply them as a foliar spray in veg, the more benefit you're going to see in the long run in your pocketbook. So the bigger your garden is, the more you want to lean on those foliar sprays for adjusting as opposed to watering the soil, because you can go so much further with foliar sprays. Like if you're a commercial farm out there and you don't have a good regular foliar spray program, I really don't know what you're doing. I really don't. It makes such a big difference in your IPM, how much you have to apply for your IPM, and the health and the benefit of your plants is just night and day in any system out there. If you're growing cannabis, you really need a good foliar spray program, and that's where you can introduce all sorts of things that you couldn't normally introduce into, like, let's say, a doser system or a really salt heavy hydroponic system. You can foliar spray that all on in veg and get a lot benefit out of that you wouldn't have, and reduce the amount of chemicals you're using to grow a higher quality product. And that's what is done across the board in ag when it comes to hydroponics. They're not relying exclusively, particularly with boutique products, when you're talking about higher end greenhouse tomatoes, or you're talking about boutique pepper crops, or products like that are grown for specific products, like any of those smoothie drinks or anything like that. Those are grown either in heavy organic systems, or they're grown in these very boutique hydroponic systems where they use as high quality chemicals as they and try to use their water as much as they can, so they have as little footprint as humanly possible. But it just depends on where they're growing these products. You see a lot more of this stuff in like the Southwest. It's very big in Israel, for growing stuff, because they don't have the ground or the space to grow traditional crops, in those places.
Well, exactly. They're in a totally different environment. That's why, having all the different mycorrhizae in your product, you're suiting into all those different areas around the world. Mm-hmm. And being able to help them. And, face it, the cannabis side of the bioag business wasn't the main focus of Dr. Faust when he started. It was the ag side.
Oh, absolutely.
Changing that industry itself.
Absolutely. It was the cannabis industry was just kind of something that, kind of crept up on bioag. It was, I heard it could be blamed on me. Yes. Yeah. But I was the first guy to sell it to the common public. Yeah.
Well, I know that because you've been on our network a couple of times before, and one of the things that maybe it was on FCP. You talked about how you were finding or you had a product you couldn't get anymore, and Bob happened to be in the store and said, "Oh, I can get you that."
Yeah, I'll never forget that. Dr. Bob Faust has never been popular with the Department of Ag, and that was one of the moments where they did not like him. But his product was registered, and there was nothing they could do about that. But there was an argument for quite a long time with the state of Oregon and fulvic acid. And Dr. Bob Faust was the head arguer on that for about 20 years, and eventually he won. And now in I think 7 states, we can actually put hydrophobic fulvic acid on our label. Not for California, though. Sorry, California.
Yeah, they're just not gonna allow it, right?
Hopefully science will win, and they'll catch up. Truth is inevitable.
Yes, eventually the powers that be do get kicked in the butt enough where they go, oh, okay.
Yes, there's I don't know what happened with it. I'm hoping it's still somewhere alive, but there was a bill going through Congress there that had to do with biostimulants and giving us a different registration system that was federal, much closer to what they have in Europe, which would be wonderful for bioag, because then we could have a much simpler registration. I wouldn't have to have as many labels for so many states, and it would save us a lot of money.
Yeah, exactly. So we did have some questions, Josh, that I was way across the room. I couldn't see what the chat was doing, so I just scrolled through quick and picked up some questions. So
all right.
When would the last application of TM7 be best?
It'd be the end of week 2 or just after the well, it depends on how long your cycle is. If you've got a quick flowering plant that's done in like one of those unique ones that's like 6 weeks, less than 7, you're going to be done like mid to beginning of week 2. Whereas because your flowers just come on faster. Whereas with a longer hybridized sativa and most common plants around that 8 to 9 week mark, you're probably going to be your last application somewhere around the end of week 2 to about halfway through week 3. But somewhere right there. As soon as you see those flowers come on, and you can say, oh, those are some hairs. Time to pull the TM7. When you stop foliar spraying, you stop with the humates and the micronutrients.
Okay.
And then rely more on your fulvic acid and your amino acids for your micronutrients.
Yeah. Now, the next one is any recommendations of Mycorrhizae products without the cannabis tax?
VAM would be a good one. There's let me think here. There's a bunch of fantastic ones from that are very ag centric from a company called Green Grow. They've got I wish I could remember the names, but Micro Plus. They had several different ones. They had a trichoderma. They had a blend that was Bacillus subtilis heavy. They had one that had several different mycorrhizae. I really like their mycorrhizae. Like their soluble mycorrhizae is one of the best on the market. Like I really can't say enough about their beneficial bacterias and mycorrhizae and the fertilizers in that in general. They've got a really really awesome program over there at Green Grow.
Cool.
They're the ones the buckets with the lion on them.
Okay. I don't go to the grocery stores, so
well, I'm not even sure if they're in Canada. They might be, but a very cool 100% organic line, based on beneficial bacteria. He's got one of the best biochar products I've ever used, called Sunshine or something like that. Mark's gonna kill me for not knowing the names of his products. I hang out with this guy all the time. But I really can't say enough about his stuff. Again, it's a little bit more expensive, but it's expensive because it's incredibly concentrated and it's from the ag world. But up there in Canada, let me think here. There was a brand. God, what was their name?
Well, I know we had Prescribed Burn on.
Down to Earth has got several different both water soluble and granular mycorrhizae that was really nice. And I'm pretty sure that if you talk to the people at Build a Soil, they had a couple of good ones that were quite affordable as well. But don't poo-poo some of the more expensive cannabis mycorrhizae. The one that comes to mind is Dynamico. It is a more expensive mycorrhizae, but it is a very good mycorrhizae that is cannabis specific. It's the one that comes in that dynamite. It looks like a stick of dynamite when you buy it. Kind of really cool marketing. Again, another gentleman that I run into all the time that I really like a lot is the guy who runs that company. But a fantastic product for homegrown cannabis. And they're very, very good mycorrhizae. But again, apply it to the roots at the first transplant. Yes, you don't necessarily have to apply it later when you do all your other transplants. I do, because I want to get the most benefit out of it. But as long as you get it on that first batch of roots going from clone into that first pot, you'll see a good benefit from having mycorrhizae. But that is the most important time. Get it right on those bare roots, no matter what kind you use.
How about in the root formation? Like I use an air cloner, Josh, that I built myself. Mm-hmm. What product should I be putting in my water in my air cloner to help promote root growth?
For that, you kind of got to play around a little bit, and it depends on how your aero cloner is set up. If it's set up like a commercial aero cloner and it's got either a UV sterilizer or you're running sanitizer sterilizers in it, which can be, depending on your environment, more beneficial than having beneficial bacteria in there that could possibly foster a bad growth because it is an aeroponic system. It depends on how you run it. If you're running it more as a bubbling system, than relying on a pump to atomize or spray water, then you can use more biostimulants and organic matter in there. But really, I'm of the opinion that with that system, it's so fast already that you should just use good, clean, pH balanced water.
I would actually use RO water. So
RO water, perfect. If you added something to that, it would be just a light micronutrients of some kind, probably like a super light amount of the multi-amino. But I would still go very, very light, and there's a chance that it's going to make your reservoir smell like an open sewer in about 3 days. So you're gonna have to change it a lot. But what we used to do back in the day, when I was just growing out of the old easy cloners and the turbo cloners, we would use either one or two products. We'd either use the Clonex cloning solution, or we'd use there was one from General Hydroponics that was called Rapid Start. That was the exact same NPK, but it was I think about 20 times more concentrated. So so with the Clonex, you use 5 mils per liter. And with the Rapid Start, use 1/4 teaspoon per gallon. Same NPK ratio.
Yeah.
So I usually went with the Rapid Start at 1/4 teaspoon per gallon, even though one little stupid bottle was like $20. It still went further. But it's been so long since I've used this stuff. I think the last couple of times I went to the grocery store, I only saw the Clonex. So I've used it with great success. It's just a very low, it's like a 1.51. And it's again, it's basically a hydroponic solution. It's made out of synthetic fertilizer, but it's a super mild synthetic fertilizer that's designed for stabilizing the pH and promoting root growth. But if you're going to do it on a very regular basis and you wanted to keep it as consistent as humanly possible, I'd recommend using a product like that. If you want to keep it as organic as you can, I would just use plain water and then foliar spray your plants with a combination of once a week with full power, and then alternate that with a very low dose of a blend of the amino acids, to get you the micronutrients and either calcium for growth or the nitrogen for getting bigger stalks and healthier growth. But it all depends on how those plants react to your sprays, in that space, and the type of light you're using. I'd much rather do that with old fluorescent lights than with any of the new LEDs. I find that those make that system much more difficult than it needs to be. I'd rather use an old shop light than an LED over a turbo cloner or something like that. I don't know why.
That's what you saw over there. That's all you saw over there was old tube lights, shop lights.
I got to admit, maybe I'm an old man now, but I prefer the tube lights for my cuttings. I just do.
Oh, you young pup. You don't have enough gray to call yourself old yet, bro.
I'm going to be 43 next month, so I'm almost there.
Oh, yeah. No, you're only as young as you actually feel, brother, so stay 20.
Oh, don't tell me that.
Stay 20. Okay, so we'll go to another question here. What is the purpose of BioSupercell?
BioSupercell is a nanostructured silica supplement that's fortified in fulvic acid. The purpose of it is it was originally designed as a foliar spray to give you the benefits of silica and fulvic acid, and to coat the leaves in that silica to help reduce the effects of bugs and fungus. But really, what it turned into over the years is one of the best adjuvants and additives you can use for just about any foliar spray out there. We've got a ton of commercial farms that are using those with beneficial bacterias, any bacteria or fungus-based insecticides or fungicides seem to get their effects severely enhanced by using it with BioSupercell. Just like watering it onto the soil will feed your microbes, it'll feed those beneficials on your leaves as well. I found that incorporating BioSupercell as a foliar spray along within my root zone and combining it with a product called Armory, which is it's from Blacksmith Products. It's again one of those bacillus mixes where it's got all the different Bacillus subtilis species in it. I don't get powdery mildew anymore. Not a spot.
Cool.
I just, I spray with that combination throughout my veg. And then when I can't spray no more, I water with it and I don't get powdery mildew at all. And I'm right here in Eugene where we get, more rain than most and, more humidity than most. And I haven't had to deal with that for a very long time. And that used to be just the consistent problem that I had. As soon as I moved down to here from Portland, I always had powdery mildew in my bedroom. And I was always either doing the sulfur thing, or spraying with copper. Sulfur seemed to be the best alternative in the organic environment until I discovered this combination of silica and beneficial bacteria.
I'll have to try that because I've actually had, I let powdery mildew get into my flower room and I let it really take hold so I could show people. And I'm actually using lactic acid bacteria and that is eating it. I actually have to make some kombucha to show that is another thing that can be used. But I think adding the Super in with those would definitely be a benefit.
Yeah, because not only is it feeding the bacteria, whatever bacteria and beneficials you're adding with it, but it's making it the skin of the plant physically thicker and stronger and making a more resistant plant. And the earlier you start with that process in low doses, the more benefit you're going to have. So as soon as you start that transplant and you've got more than a couple leaves on there, start those foliar sprays. Start them light, once every week, and as your plant builds, build it up to, twice, to, if you got time, 3 times, but I think 2 times is more than enough. And you'll get the most benefit out of your plant that way. Not only sending signals through the root zone, but by sending signals through the plant itself. And especially when you're in an organic environment and you're relying on the plant to pull the fertilizer out of the soil itself, spraying it with the fulvic acid, with the silica really helps increase the plant's ability to pull up more. Especially when you start early and you build those bigger stalks. You get that bigger stalk on that smaller plant, along with that healthier, more bouncy root ball that when you pull it out, it's bright white, and you throw that next one, and it's just beautiful and it jumps right into that soil. You're going to get a lot better result out of that plant, and it's going to be more resistant against anything you didn't want to see.
Well, you're giving the biology what it needs to not only grow the cells, but to grow itself, which puts more biology. It's like sending in the Marines and then the next day sending in the Navy and then the next day sending in the Air Force. It's constantly growing more biology, which builds more cells, a lot quicker, and you have a much healthier plant.
Absolutely. If you have stress, those things you can't equate for, a lightning strikes, power goes out, something happened, the bridge fell, I couldn't get across town to get to my garden for 3 days. Like here we had an ice storm a month ago, and I know a couple of guys who had commercial gardens that they went without power for 2 weeks. So that means, so they lost 2 giant grow rooms, and they're relying on Jenny power to run the moms and everybody else, but they're still pissed because they're not as happy. You can never run as much light and as much heat as you need when you're running on generators, so you got to get by building them stronger, by using more biostimulants when you hit those stressful points. And then your plants will deal with that stress much better, especially when you're protecting a mother stock. That's all you can do. That's just, triage at that point, cut away what's dead and hopefully the rest will thrive after it's gone.
Yeah. Well, you guys are lucky in a lot of ways. You're not going really that much under freezing. Where up here we had 2 weeks of minus 30, minus 40 weather, and that's where I got the powdery mildew from. Is I couldn't maintain the temperature and humidity, and I kept, every time I opened my door, because it's a single door entrance, I was getting that blast in, and that's what really kicked it over to that. But yeah, shit happens, right?
Oh yeah, it's where you live, when I got the first batch of Super from the company, they said, here's the first 2.5 gallon jug, go try it on something. I called up my friend at 45th Parallel and I said, hey man, we're expecting this crazy heat wave. It was a couple of years ago when we were getting those crazy heat spikes of 105 and 110.
Yeah.
And I'm like, hey man, can you spray a couple plants for me this weekend? Let's see what happens. Not a problem, buddy. Well, it's like a bad game of telephone out there, and they end up spraying like 100 plants, 1/4 of an acre. Give me a fucking heart attack. I'm like, I don't know. I haven't used this yet. I don't know what's going to happen. I'll see you on Monday. I hope we're friends. everything that got sprayed with Super didn't wilt at all and looked beautiful. Everything that didn't wilted and got set back by 2 weeks. Because up this far north, at the 45th parallel, that's Salem, Oregon. No one uses shade cloth up here when they're growing cannabis. You never need it until now. Now's the time where during those crazy dry summers that we get these crazy heat spikes, where everything wilts when it gets hotter than 100 degrees. But we never saw that when I grew up in Oregon as a kid. We never had it that hot. You might get those rare weeks where it stayed 100, it never got cooler than 80 at night, for a couple weeks. And those were torture, because hardly any place has, had air conditioning back in the 80s. But now really, that's commonplace. In Oregon during the summer, we get crazy heat in the valley now.
Yeah. Well, and I know even up here are like I'm in January or in February, and we're above zero today, which is not a normal thing in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
So let's go back to another question here. What can be done to stretch plants out that have real tight node structure?
This is something I get asked a lot. What you want to do is you want to take a combination of either full power and nitro amino, or Super and nitro amino, and you want to use that as a foliar spray and in the water. If you're trying to get them stretch, you want to use the nitro in the water, and you want if you're using the Super, you do not want to water that in if you're trying to get tighter, more space in between your nodes. You want to keep it as the spray, but you want to add either the Calmino or the nitro amino in with it, and that's what's going to encourage the stretch, the more space in between your nodes, but it'll still be consistent up as it goes up the plant. You're not going to get these blown out sections where there's like 4 inches between a node and then tight again. You'll get consistent. You'll start to see it separate as it gets taller. But that's really I had a couple of customers and friends that were growing a Mac 1, and for years I grew Bubba Kush and Purple Urkel, and they just basically, you grow them as tall as you wanted them, and then they just flowered and they didn't stretch at all. But holy shit, do they grow slow, and they're way too tight in nodes, and you got to strip everything to get them. My Cherry AK does the same thing. So if I don't stay on top of my foliar sprays and get it to stretch out at those particular times, on the second transplant, and just after I thin them about maybe a week and a half before bloom, then they get this, they're way too tight. And I got to cut away sites that could have, if they were stretched out, they would have been perfect. But now because they're so short, they're hidden by a bunch of leaves, and they might as well just go away.
Yeah. And you want, like, there's other ways to do it, not just with the micronutrients, but with the light and how far away your light is.
Oh, absolutely.
Stretch and but the using the micronutrients, I think, is a wonderful way to really promote healthier plants without having to use the lights to force them to stretch, to reach for the light and stress them out, right?
Yeah, and you'll get the big difference between the two techniques is with some plants you got to do a little bit of both. Like with Purple Urkel or Bubba, you really need to do both. Whereas with the Mac 1, it'll stretch with just the sprays. It's got a little bit more stretchiness potential to it. But sometimes you just got to do the light. But when you do the light, usually they get spindlier at the top and lighter green. And again, the amino acids, whether you're adding nitrogen or the calcium or the micronutrients, are going to help prevent that yellowing from happening and keep the stalks big and thick. They're going to be a little bit more sensitive though, and you need to make up for that with wind. You got to have good wind that brustles them up and makes them, it helps those stalks get thicker. That's one of the big things that people overlook that makes a very, very big difference in how your stalks and how your nodes are affected. You got to have good, if you don't see leaves slightly moving in your garden, you do not have enough flow down by your root zone. You need to see that. If you don't see that, there is a problem.
So we're going to go to another Lucas and wanted another one. When would you cut Calmino off in flower as far as soil drench?
About 2 weeks before harvest. 2 weeks to just you can run that stuff pretty far to the end, but I don't recommend watering with absolutely anything 2 weeks before harvest. At 2 weeks to harvest, it's water or nothing.
Okay. Sounds good. Now, the other question, and I think in a few weeks or a little bit, we're going to be able to solve this one, Josh, is there anywhere in Alberta or Canada I can pick up some of this Bioag products?
We are currently working on that right now, me and Ken there. And there are some places that are carrying Bioag products in Canada. I am not as familiar with the stores up there, so I couldn't tell you for sure what they are. But contact your local store. If they buy from, was it Black Swallow or
Black Swallow Living Soils. Actually, I'm using Black Swallow Living Soils.
They are a distributor of Bioag products in Canada, so they can absolutely supply a grow store with our products. So if your local grow store buys from them, they can absolutely supply you with Bioag products.
Yeah,
and we're going to bug them about it, and I will sell them more stuff. And I will gladly make them a better deal to let you guys a better deal. You just gotta make that. Tell them that you want it. And I'll get it to you.
Sounds good. And we're gonna work something out, maybe a discount code or something like that, where I can have the products on my website and maybe shipped directly from you guys, and they can buy off my website.
I am working on that. Yes, unfortunately the technological gears grind very slowly at Bioag, but they do get there eventually. But
momentum, brother, momentum. It's that it's that train. It's going up the mountain. It's chug, chug, chug.
Yes. The thing with Bioag is that we are a little more than a 50% ag company. So the way ag works is you get all your orders for all your ag business at the beginning of the year, the first month or two, and then you have the next month and a half to get it out to everyone at a specific date. So on top of all the cannabis orders that I put in this time of year, which are not small, the guys in front of me. So I'll send a guy like half a truckload of 10 pallets of Bioag stuff. The guy in front of me ordered 10 tankers of 10,000 gallons of each product. His order takes priority over mine for obvious reasons. Because we do 50% of our business in the first 3 months of the year. And that means we're running around with our heads chopped off from December till about April. So right now is not and we're in the process of expanding. We're introducing 4 new products this year, which means we are building a new building and building a new storage space to facilitate these new products.
Can you tell us a little bit about the new products?
Absolutely. I actually just had a meeting with them about that here on Friday. And we've got 4 new liquid products coming out. 2 of them are liquid products that are versions of our dry. We're going to have a liquid version of TM7, and we're going to have a liquid version of Cyto Plus. We're also going to have a product called, I think it's called Impact, and that's going to be like a full power version of TM7. So it's going to have the same micronutrient balance to it, but it's going to be fortified in a fulvic acid, which is going to be for our friends using hydroponic systems, particularly rock wool. That's really where that's going to jam with, but it's also a more available micronutrient that can be used late in flower that doesn't have the humic acid. When you use humic acid and micronutrients late in flower with cannabis, it can reduce your THC. Which is what we do with hemp farmers to make sure they don't ding hot. Whereas we take fulvic acid, micronutrients, potassium, and phosphorus to increase THC in late flowering. But it just depends on the plant that you're growing and the effect that you're going for. The other product that we have coming out is called Evolostrum. I did not invent these names. Please don't. But what it is it's a custom blend that was made, I believe, for the hazelnut industry. And it's kind of an all-in-one biostimulant package where it's got 2 different types of silica, micronutrient pack similar to TM7. It's got 28 different amino acids. It's got humic acid, fulvic acid, and kelp.
Okay.
And all 4 of these products are going to be coming out in the next 2 months. I'll have them. I believe that all of them are going to. I know that the TM7 and Cyto Plus and maybe the Impact are going to be available in smaller sizes, but I believe the Velostrum is only going to be available in commercial sizes, 2.5 gallon and larger. because that's more of a ag product. But if it becomes popular, we will be doing a giveaway here when I get my first batch. And I'll be talking to Ken here and coming on here, and maybe a couple other popular podcasts out there in the world. And we're going to be giving some out this summer so people can tell me where it fits in their garden and how well it works with what they're doing.
Oh, exactly. Now, there's one other product, and I know I mentioned it before the show, the 444 that you guys are still working on, but I think that's something that's really important for a lot of people in Canada, being able to grow 4 plants, is you guys are putting a system together that's basically going to cover all the nutrient needs of a full cycle for 4 plants. If I understand what you were talking about.
Yes, and it's going to be using incorporating basically a lot of the products that you already have, along with another one that you don't yet, and it's going to be using it as a top dressing. So it's going to be using the aminos, the silicas, but and everything else as a top dress. But you only use it anywhere from once a week to once every 14 days. This is not meant for performance. This is meant for ease of use and for novice users. This is drawn in crayon in stick figures for someone who kills plants with black thumbs. So this is the starter kit. This is for that guy. And it applies to peppers and tomatoes as well as it does cannabis. The feeding chart on this that it was based on was developed by, I believe, the University of North Carolina. They mapped out the macro and micronutrient needs for cannabis in a 4-week veg, 8-week flower cycle. What they need exactly, specifically calcium, potassium, phosphorus, micronutrients, the whole need, and we based our amounts and how much you use on that.
Okay, which makes sense.
So it's not there's more stuff that a plant wants. This is everything that a plant needs. So basic meat and potatoes.
Now, I know that all the products, you can use with drip systems, you can use with fertigation. Yes. A lot of people have, especially the hydro guys, have biofilm buildup in their lines when they're using different amendments, different product lines. From what I understand, the humic fulvic actually breaks all that stuff down and cleans the line. So is that true, or is that a myth?
Yes and no. It depends on what that humic and fulvic acid is derived from, and how old it is, and how bioactive
I'm talking Bioag, okay?
Yeah, Bioag with Bioag. Yes, you can use them in drip systems, and yes, but you still, when you're using organic matter in lines like that, they need to be purged and cleaned on a regular basis. You can still adding particularly fulvic acid and amino acids in with water means you're going to be growing stuff, good or bad. You've got all the potential for growth, and all it takes is one little microbe of something that's bad for it to grow in the corner. Everyone's got PVC fittings, and they got that little edge sitting there, and this is where the shit builds up, and it just takes a little bit of black funk for something to break off loose and clog a dripper or an emitter. But that's why we have filters on everything and redundant filters in these systems. But that doesn't mean you don't want to clean those tubes on a regular basis. Products like Full Power, they're never really going to build up enough biofilm in there. I tell you, you're never going to notice a difference with that. But if you're using heavy amounts of compost teas, particularly freshly brewed compost teas, and you're running those through lines along with other products that have meal bases to them, those got to be rinsed out on a regular basis and cleaned and sanitized to be reused again. You're not going to get around that. But if you're just running, you've got a highly amended soil or a great raised bed, and you're doing your top dressings and you're just adding biostimulants through your lines, you're not going to see much buildup in there at all. But that doesn't mean you want to be lazy and let it sit for half a year and not clean them. It's all about regular maintenance that makes everything run like a clock. But you will get much less biofilm buildup using liquid as opposed to dry formulas. That's why we've got recipes on how to change all of our powders into liquids, or we're offering liquid alternatives to them now. That's why we have the liquid TM7 and the liquid Cyto Plus, is because those are common custom blends that we make for lots of ag farmers. And we've had requests, and we blend it for a lot of cannabis farmers as well. So they become very popular, because not everyone wants to have to go through the process of blending it, mixing it, balancing the pH, filtering it again, and then having a solution. We can do all that for you. It's just going to cost a couple bucks more than the powder.
Yeah. Now we do have, and I'm not sure if you can answer this question, but so how often flush with sulfuric acid?
Sulfuric acid.
I think he's talking about the lines, but I don't do hydro,
with the lines. If you're going to purge your system, it depends on how dirty it gets and how quick, but a good common sense thing is every 2 weeks, but if I was using a strong sanitizer, I'd want to make sure that it was after a heavy feed, so I could let it open dry, make sure that you get all those gases and shit out of there, and make sure you purge it with plain water after you do a good clean with a sanitizer. You do not want any of that shit getting into your root zone. You spent all that time building those microbes. You don't want a sanitizer. But they do sell. There are some pretty cool enzymatic cleaners that come from like the pond industry that they've got for that they sell to some of these commercial gardens to clean their lines, where you just leave it full of water with this stuff, and then it's supposed to eat it all up, and then you flush it out. Another way that we used to do it back in the day is they used to sell a product out of Canada called SM90. And that was a oil-based product that was actually designed as a foliar spray for spider mites that hydro guys started putting in through their lines at I think 1 mil per gallon or something. And it coats all the lines with oil, preventing anything from building up on it. It also makes the reservoir smell a lot better than smelling like chemicals.
Okay, well, that's an interesting way to solve a problem like that when you come to think of it.
Yeah, it was one of the things we did really common back in the day. SM90 was in every hydro store in the early 2000s and all the way up to the 2010s. That was really Flariform, I believe, manufactured that product. They had a bunch of cool stuff. I really dug that company. They were those guys and the guys from Hydrotech and who were the other guys that I sold a bunch of their fertilizers. They had the Thrive Alive green and the Thrive Alive red.
You've lost me totally, because I went in and I bought some dry Gaia green powders, like the rock phosphates, etc.
Yeah.
I never got into the bottled stuff. It just never appealed to me. I was always 100% organic.
Yeah, these guys sold organic liquids, but it was more in tune to the cannabis company. They had the red Thrive Alive, which was B1 and kelp, and the red one was a traditional product, and the green one was organic. But it was one of the best kelp products for years. I loved Thrive Alive green. That stuff was great. Super green. In fact, a lot of the times I greened them up a little bit too much with that stuff. That was one of the first times I go, wow, I kind of fucked a plant up with seaweed. That was interesting. It can be done, people. Less is more.
Oh, and that's why we have Leighton's saying of don't be a moron. Keep the balance. It's all about balance.
Yes.
Yeah.
And keeping track of your plants with a record. When you do it, while you do it. Inevitably you're going to be sitting there in front of a reservoir going, did I do 2 cups or 1? Was it? And you're looking at the bottle. Write that shit down, and make a habit out of doing it in the right order. That way you're less likely to mess it up. Inevitably you're gonna, people aren't perfect, shit happens, but doing that with biostimulants is far less devastating to a garden than doing that with fertilizers.
You can never put too much biology on. You can put too much micronutrients on, etc. But it's pretty tough to put the biology on. It's either going to become food or it's going to fit into the system and work like a dream.
Oh, yes. Sorry about that, folks. That is George, my dog. He is protecting the neighborhood.
Good for him. It's a good job for him.
Yes. George is, about 30 pounds of all muscle.
Yep.
15 pounds. I'm sorry.
He thinks he's got 30 pounds, though. He's going to get you.
Ask him. He's a Rottweiler. He's just a little Chihuahua terrier.
So, Josh, we're going to end it here pretty quick. Is there anything that you would like to add about the future of bioag, what's coming, where you think the future lies with biostimulants?
Well, biostimulants have got are going to be have a big coming out party when it comes to North America over the next 10 years. There's a lot of really cool stuff that's coming out, and the technology that they're using in India and in Europe, some of the stuff, and using it not only with plants but with animals as well, is there's some just amazing things that are going on, and there's a lot of really cool new products. They've taken NPK fertilizer about as far as they can take it. Everything else that's going to be really cool and come out later is either going to be these nano-structured fertilizers or these different bacteria-based biostimulants that have very, very crazy potential for the future. But it's just about as they get developed, seeing where they fit in the program, and helping people again grow cleaner gardens that have less of an impact on the environment, that grow higher quality products for everyone to enjoy.
Yeah, and that's not just the cannabis industry, guys. That's across the board.
Yes.
It's always going to be about how many cells you have in your heart, to have a healthy heart. And if you don't have the biology building them, or the building blocks being supplied, you're not going to have a healthy heart. It's the same in the plant, the animal, and us. Remember that, guys.
Yes. What you feed your plants is what you're eating. Remember that.
Yeah. Or what you want to be eating is what you're feeding your plants. Okay. Yes. Hard for us to eat rock nuts, Josh. You try it, but a little tough.
Yes. That's a rough one.
All right, Josh, put your fingers up, say peace, and we're going to end the broadcast.
All right. It was great talking with you guys.